let's try and remember where we got to. So we got to Moses, Joshua, Samuel, and we said that this was the prophets. What's the prophets? And then you come to the time period of the kings. Saul, David, Solomon. Kingdom gets split. Then you're going to come to your last kings. Hoshea and Zedekiah. And we were here with Ahaz. And I said from Usher's chronology, you can get the year 742. So that you're all aware, there are lots of chronologists, and Usher is not the most famous. He is, but today he's been overtaken, and the most famous one in recent history was an Adventist. And was put it up here. It's pronounced different ways. I pronounced it Theo, but I think people pronounce it different ways. And he comes up with different dates. So just make you aware that we already know about him and all the other things. We believe 742 is the correct date. And you've got in the north, Pekah. He's the king in the north, and Ahaz is the king in the south. So we've got the north and the south, and we're in Isaiah chapter 7. So in Isaiah chapter 7, we've got the king of Syria. His name was, remember? Reason. And then we've got Ephraim. And Ephraim is what? 10 tribes. So we're split into 2 and 10. And then we've got the king. Of Israel. His name is Pekah. And we've got that, we're in Isaiah 7. It says in verse, I spelled it wrong, E-P-H R. A-I-N. It was just the A and the I.
Yeah. You did that the other way too, but I just thought that.
Thank you. And we're in verse 5. And in verse 5 it lists all 3 people there. Or 3 groups or 3 entities. So we've got 1, 2, and 3. So this is all summary, so hopefully we can see that.
Yes.
But we know that there's a relationship between these 2 here. Because Ephraim is 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 tribes. And Pekah is just the leader or the ruler of one of them. But he's been, let me do it, let me put him this way. Let me put him here. Here's Pekah. And Pekah is the leader or the ruler of one of these tribes. It doesn't matter which one. But he's also ruler of all 10. So he has this dual role. He's the king of all 10 and he's the king of his own tribe. We're okay with all of that? We'll remember that.
Yeah.
So that's the relationship between these 2. So really, there's only 2 groups. It's Syria and Israel, or Ephraim. So there's this confederacy or union, and it's twofold. Now we're probably going to get tripped up. What is Israel? Is it a state or a church? Both. And what is Syria? Both.
It's a state. Depends on how you look at it.
And so we're saying this is a state, and we're saying...
If you say they're pagan, you could say it's a church.
Yeah. It's like another Egypt.
But Egypt is what? Egypt is the United States.
Well,
Countries. Or what else is it?
Well, look at I mean, as in, it represents the world. The world and atheism.
Yeah.
Well, it still represents the country, France.
Okay.
So it's still a
That's
state.
right.
They're all
You
countries.
just said the United States.
Oh, so you're looking
Well,
at
my sister said the United States, and I said that's a country. Then you said France, I said that's a country. They're
Okay.
all countries.
Yeah, secular and what,
They may have some religious
joining of
issues.
state and church. Yeah.
What is?
No, I'm just thinking about another, application is the church and state
Application of?
okay. Prophecy also shows us that there's going to be the amalgamation of church and state. So, yeah, Syria would represent state.
So Syria represents state, and then Israel would represent church, because it's a church,
Yes,
yeah?
yes.
So you're going to make this church and state.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is we're actually going to see it's the other way around. It's the other way around. But as soon as you get to the symbology of this, to this twofold union, it already takes you to this church-state relationship. So we're headed in the wrong direction. So I'm not worried about which ones you think it is or it isn't. But what I want us to already know is, as we're approaching the subject, we're expecting it to be a church-state relationship, because it's twofold. But then we've got this threefold element to contend with as well. We've got 3 and 2. We've got to deal with both of them, and we need to get these right. So we're going to see it's actually the other way around.
Okay.
Syria is going to be church, and Israel is going to be state. But that's not what I'm worried about at the moment. I'm just worried that you can see that you go into an Old Testament story. It's got nothing to do with the end of the world. It's just a little skirmish that happened nearly 3,000 years ago. And what we're saying is that this story has symbology encoded in it, which is bringing you to the end of the world.
Yeah.
And the reason we're seeing that is through the number 10. We saw this number 10. Number 10 means what? Bad. Number 10 is bad, and number 2 is good. You've got the good people and the bad people. Number 10 has different symbology as well, but we only picked up on that one. That's one we wanted to make a point on, that it's bad. So you know this is a bad group coming against God's people. And we'll read the verses again, but it says that there was this joining together or confederacy.
Yes.
And it's only 2 groups, 2 nations, 2 countries. So there's the 2 nations or countries. And as soon as you do that, you get this twofold enemy. So you know this is a church and state relationship that's being addressed here. We're going to sort out which one's going to be which in a moment. But the other thing that it points out explicitly, which we have to contend with, is now it's saying that there's 3. It's taking the king, Pekah, as some kind of separate unit. So we have to factor all of that in. So let's go ahead and just do this bit, and then we're going to move on in a moment. So let's deal with this bit. Why is this church and why is this state? So this gets a bit complicated in the sense that you need a lot of information to be able to prove and demonstrate that. What I'm going to say in a moment. So I'm just going to give you the logic and the overview, and then you'd have to go back and demonstrate or prove for yourselves that this is the truth. We're in the time period of Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, pagan Rome, and Papal Rome. So when you go into Daniel chapter 11, Brother Patrick read Daniel chapter 11 to you this morning, I believe. When you begin from the first verse and you carry on through, and even into Daniel chapter 10, you'll notice something, that Babylon isn't mentioned. It doesn't mention Babylon. It starts with the history of Medo-Persia, as it does in Daniel chapter 8, by the way. Daniel chapter 8, it does the same thing. And there's a reason for that. The Lord's trying to teach us something. But that's not the point I want to make. We're in Medo-Persia, and you're in Daniel chapter 11. Explains about the current king, Cyrus. Explains about 3 more kings that are going to be coming up. Cambyses, Philosmodus, Darius. And then it's going to deal with the 4th king, who is Esther's husband, Xerxes, King Xerxes. And after him, there are going to be many, many Persian kings. In fact, it's about 100 years before Alexander the Great is going to come on the scene. And it skips in one verse from that 4th king straight to Alexander the Great. So Brother Patrick said that the Lord's trying to teach us something at that level. It's not that the other kings are not important, because the next 2 kings are extremely important. We need to understand it. But it's a different story. So one of the difficulties when you're approaching prophecy, as we are, is that as soon as you get one piece of information under your belt, it gets, and you're standing firm, the foundation you're on gets swept away, because we say, actually, don't look at it this way, look at this whole thing a different way. Then you thought you knew it, and then it's just more complicated. So as an example, when we're dealing with those kings, we normally deal with 7 kings, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The reason we're going to deal with the 7 kings is because this is dealing with the everlasting gospel, and we're going to look at the 1st king, the 4th king, and the 7th king. Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes, because this is the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd decree. Does everybody know what I'm talking about if I do that?
Yes.
If you're not, I can just explain it quickly, but it was just revision. We have done that. But they're coming out of captivity, because some people are looking a bit bemused. Cyrus is going to come on the scene, and he's going to say, you're released from Babylon. But that's only the 1st decree. Then there's going to be another one by Darius. This isn't the Darius in the book of Daniel, this is someone else, different king. And then there's going to be the 3rd one, Artaxerxes, and this is the 457 that you and I are all familiar with, which begins the 2300 days.
Is that also Ahasuerus?
No.
No, okay.
So that's why I'm bringing this point up,
Okay.
because we want to get this firm in your mind. In fact, we could just get rid of these ones, because we don't want to really make that point. We just say there's 3 kings. So there's 3 kings, that's all done. Then we're going to say, by the way, we don't want to teach you about 3 kings, we want to teach you about 7 kings. Because it's 7 kings that you need to know about. And so it gets complicated. Then I say, forget the 7 kings, because what I'm really interested in is 5 kings. I want you to worry about the 5 kings. Because each of these 3 stories, which is all dealing with the same history, are drawing out different truths.
Yes.
And what we need to be able to do is compartmentalise these various symbols and what they're trying to teach, and do a little study on that, put that to one side. Then do another study on these 7 kings and put that to one side, and do one on these 5 kings and put that to one side, and then join them together, and we'll begin to get a much more comprehensive understanding of what's going to happen at the end of the world. So we do this so many times it confuses people. So you need to not get trapped in this tunnel vision that I thought it was 3 and then we're saying it's 7, and then you say, well, which one is it? And I'm saying it's all of them. It's all of them. Just one more point I want to make. Brother Patrick mentioned about, and I can't remember who asked the question, I don't know if it was Brother Larry or Brother Teo, about, did someone say who's the church in the parable of the 10 virgins, or the bride? Did someone ask that? Was it you? So well, let's just quickly do that, because it's a similar kind of thing to here. You've got 10 virgins, and my question is, who's the 10 virgins? The 10 virgins are the church.
Yeah.
But Ellen White says it's not the church, or it's not the bride at least. So you have to, because these are onlookers, these are participants, and then you've got to deal with who the bride is. So who's the bride? Okay, so what you've got is, it's not a problem, it's the problem is with us. We've got such a narrow view of Scripture because of our training, the way we've been trained to observe it. We're saying, if the bride is the church, then the 10 virgins can't be the church, something's gone wrong. Or if the 10 virgins of the church, what must the bride be? But what I'm saying is, it's both. And we can become comfortable, hopefully, and accepted that you can have two different symbols which actually have the same application, they mean the same thing, even in one parable next to each other. And it's not doing disservice to the parable. In fact, that's what you're required to understand. You need to interchange them one with another. And the reason why it's bringing this truth up is because this group of people at one level are going to be serving this group of people. They're doing some service for them. That's what the virgins do. If you think of their bridesmaids, for instance, they're not really bridesmaids, but if you were thinking at that level, they do a service to the bride. So if you can begin to see that, there's someone in the church who's doing something for someone else in the church. You can draw that out from the story. If you can accept that both of these things represent church, then you can see that there may be a story in here of two different churches. This is a group of one church and this is a group of another church. And the terminology that we'd use at the end of the world would be the church militant, the church triumphant. So you can get different things out of this, but sometimes we have this very narrow vision that it has to be something and it can't be anything else. And just one other thing, by the way, when we talk about the 10 virgins, Brother Larry isn't here because this was his question. When we think about the 10 virgins, and 5 are wise, and 5 are foolish, the question is, who are the 10 virgins? And we just said the church, but the question is, well, what are you going to identify the church as? Are you going to identify that this is 9 million people, and this is 9 million people, making up Adventism? Is that what you're saying? Or are you saying that, actually, this is only 500 people, and this is 500 people, because they're only about, it's not real parable, this is a parable, 1,000 people who believe this message, and these 10 virgins are the people who understand this message. So depending on how you're going to approach this parable determines how you view what's going on here. Or are you saying that the 5 wise are the SDA church and the 5 foolish are the world or Babylon? Is that the point that you're trying to make? So you need to see what the point you're trying to make when you analyse a parable, because they can have multiple meanings. And so that you think I'm not making it up. All of these applications are correct. They're all correct at some level. Yes. So when we're dealing with these things, we need to be familiar with what we're doing. And I don't know how we got to this one. Oh yes, I do.
Kings.
That's
Yeah,
right.
between the
We're
3
in
and the 2.
Daniel chapter 11, and we were looking at Medo Persia, and there's 7 Persian kings, but it's only the 5 that we're dealing with. And it splits it up very specifically because the language is precise. There's the current one, there's 3 more, and then the 4th. Then it's going to go to Greece. We're not going to read the verses because there's a lot of information to go through, but as soon as you get to those verses, it talks about a singular king who's Alexander the Great. He's going to die, and then there's going to be 4 generals that come up. Brother Patrick did put it on the board, I think it was yesterday. The consolidation of Greece as it goes from those 4 generals to 2 units, 2 groups, and it's really literally is the kingdom gets split between the north and the south, and this is the Seleucid Empire and the Ptolemaic Empire. And as soon as you get to this kind of phraseology, you're going to see throughout chapter 11, it's now going to be dealing with the terminology of the king of the north and the king of the south. And the king of the north owns a lot of territory, and the king of the south doesn't own that much territory. And often when we deal with this, we say that this is Egypt. But this is called the king of the north, king of the south, straight, we're okay with that. I've not directed you to verse, but once you start going into from verse 4 onwards, in Daniel 11, you're going to start picking up the phraseology, this warfare between the two of them. So it's going to talk about the king of the north and the king of the south. South is Egypt, easy to identify. Now if you just drop back 3 chapters to Daniel chapter 8, verse 9. So in Daniel chapter 8, verse 9, and we're going to be looking at the history that's just here. This is the history of Daniel chapter 8, verse 9. I'm just showing you on the board where we are. So on this chart, if you look at the chart, we're just here in Daniel 8, verse 9. So what am I pointing to? Sorry? Yeah, but I'm not going to point like that. I'm actually putting a line here. So what history are we dealing with? The transition between...
Greece and Rome.
Okay, we're talking, so Daniel 8 verse 9 is the transition between Greece and pagan Rome. That's what verse 9 is dealing with. So you need to be clear, if you want to write a note or something, that's what Daniel 8 verse 9 is dealing with. It's the transition from Greece to pagan Rome. Now, you can see this transition from Greece to pagan Rome in Daniel chapter 7. But when you do it in Daniel chapter 7, look how it does it. It says...
Daniel 7.
Sorry, Daniel 7. If you were to go to Daniel 7, it says... verse 6. After this, 7:6, I beheld and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings. So there's these 4 generals. And the beast had also 4 heads, they're the real generals, and dominion was given unto it. So there it says, this is Greece, this leopard power here with the 4 heads, the 4 generals.
Yeah.
We're okay with that? And then now we're going to transition to pagan Rome. Verse 7, it says, after this, in the night visions, after this I saw in the night visions, and behold a 4th beast. So you've gone from Greece to pagan Rome. Is everybody okay with that? And how did it happen? It doesn't tell you, it just says, this is what Greece looks like, and this is what pagan Rome looks like. It doesn't give you any more information. So, that transition from 6 to 7, if you were to insert a line in between them, you can just put in there Daniel 8 verse 9, in between verses 6 and 7 of Daniel 7, because that verse is going to tell you how it happened. Because that's what we want to know. How does it happen? What does it look like? So we're in Daniel 8 verse 9. In Daniel 8 verse 9, this throws people because it doesn't look anything like the transition from Greece to pagan Rome. 8 verse 9 says, and out of one of them came forth a little horn, which waxed exceeding great, toward the south, toward the east, and toward the pleasant land. We're all in Daniel 8 verse 9? Yeah. So Daniel 8 verse 9 says he's going to go towards the south, the east, and the pleasant land. So it says the south, then the east, then the pleasant land. Now the pleasant land is Israel. And the south is, what's the south?
Egypt.
Okay, so this is a trick question, because what is the south really? We're here. What is the south? Rome is the one that's on the attack. So he's going to go to the south. Rome is going to go to the south, but what is the south?
Egypt.
No.
America.
This is the transition from what empire to what empire.
Greece to pagan Rome.
So when he goes to the south, where is he going?
Greece.
Pagan Rome is going somewhere.
Oh,
So where would he be going to? He's going to Greece.
He's attacking Greece.
No. I'll explain, but I want us to conceptualize what the problem is. Remember, we put Daniel. We've got 7:6, and we've got 7:7, and I said tuck into here what verse?
8.
And what is 7:6?
Description of
Greece.
And what is 7:7?
Pagan Rome.
Pagan Rome. And therefore, what must 8:9 be?
How it became.
How it became. So this is how. How what became what?
How Greece became
Rome.
No. How pagan Rome destroys, comes the next nation over Greece.
Yes.
It's going to tell you how it does it.
Yes.
And how does it do it? In verse 9, what does it say? It's going to go to the south, then the
East.
then the pleasant land.
Ah, I see.
So this is how. So this is a story of going from Greece to pagan Rome. So what must the south be? It must be Greece. And what must the east be?
Israel.
What must the east be? What must this is a story about Greece to pagan Rome. What must the east be? Must be Greece.
As well.
And what must the pleasant land be?
Is Greece.
Greece.
It's all
It's
Greece.
all Greece. Because it's the story of the takeover of Greece.
And the empire which incorporates all the countries.
So you're going from Greece to pagan Rome, and verse 8 tells you how it happened. So everything in verse 9, chapter 8, verse 9, this is all Greece.
Yeah.
This is Greece. Okay, so to help you along on this story, everybody heard of Cleopatra.
Yes.
So what nationality is Cleopatra? Don't answer straight away. Look what we've done on the board. What nationality is Cleopatra? No.
Greece.
She's a Greek. Let me do the question again. Where does she live?
She lives in Egypt.
She lives in Egypt. But what is she? She's a Greek.
Because
She's a Greek.
she married.
It's a Greek name.
Sorry?
She married him.
They're Greeks all the way through. Greeks have been ruling Egypt
Really?
for 100 plus years before she
was
comes on the
Greek.
scene.
Yeah.
Actually, she comes from Greece originally. Or Greek.
I don't know, she's literally from the country of Greece, but
She's
she's
a
part of the
descendant?
Grecian Empire.
Okay.
Because who's her great 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 grandfather?
Some Greek person. Oh,
Ptolemy.
Some Greek person.
Prophecy was seen to be a figurative delineation
Of events.
of historical.
Oh, no, I'm not
events.
saying,
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if it was in scripture. I'm sure
No.
it's in history, yeah.
It's in history, and
Wow.
we need to get history and bring it
Yeah,
into
absolutely.
prophecy.
Yeah.
So
How interesting, I didn't know that.
once it clicks, now you know the intrigue between Julius Caesar and Mark Antony. If you're interested in all those movies, this is all prophecy, what's going on there. And it becomes relevant. Don't watch movies, but now you might want to go back and watch the movie with I'm not saying to watch it, but with a purpose.
Yeah.
Now it has a purpose. Now you want to see, actually, what is going on in that story.
They're not very accurate movies, are they?
No, the point is not the movies, but I'm saying
It's just the subject.
if you go back and look at it now,
Yeah.
now you know what to look for.
Yeah.
Because this isn't just some random love story. This is a fulfillment of prophecy.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we are in this story where you're taking everybody over. But what we want to remember, it says the south, the east, and the pleasant land. Okay, so that's where we are. And the reason why I want to bring this up is all of this is Greece. We have to remember this is Greece. So in Daniel chapter 8, what does Greece look like? It looks like a south and the east and the pleasant land.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to do away with the pleasant land bit because that doesn't serve our purpose. So that's just Israel. We're okay with that.
Yeah.
So we want to deal with the south and the east.
Right.
We're in the south and the east in Daniel chapter 8. In
Yeah.
Daniel chapter 7, this is Greece to pagan Rome. So you know the south and the east are Greece.
Yeah.
So hold that concept in this hand. Now let's look at this one, because this is Daniel 11. In Daniel 11, what does Greece look like now?
Oh.
Daniel 11. So if we go to the verses, we're going to get bogged down. Okay, what we'll do is we'll drop down to verse 5. We're in verse 5, Daniel 11, verse 5.
Right.
And the king of the south shall be strong. Who's this?
Ptolemy.
Greece.
Greece. This is Greece. And the king of the south shall be strong, and one of his princes, and he shall be strong above him, and have dominion. His dominion shall be a great dominion. Verse 6. And in the end of the years, they shall join themselves together for the king's daughter of the south. Who's that?
Cleopatra.
It's not Cleopatra. It's the south. It's Greece. It's Greece.
Still Greece.
Greece.
Everything's Greece.
She is.
Shall come to the king of the north. And who's the king of the north?
Rome.
Greece.
Oh.
This is all Greece.
Okay.
This is all Greece. There's warfare in Greece. It's called a civil war.
Okay.
It's Greece, Greece, Greece all the way along until somewhere in Daniel 11, halfway through, you're going to switch to pagan Rome. But it's all Greece.
So Greece, these are all Greece, primarily because Greece had taken them all over and was ruling all of them at the time, yes? Good.
Yes. Greece owns all the territory, and in this chapter, at the beginning of this chapter, it's literal. So when it talks about north, it means north. When it says south, it means south. When it says east, it means east. It means what it says with respect to a compass. When you go halfway through, 3/4 of the way into the chapter, it becomes symbolic, then you have to be really careful about what you're doing with the directions of the compass when you start dealing with north and south. You have to be careful how you deal with them when it comes to symbolic application.
Yeah.
But literal application, those directions of the compass are talking about direction in real life.
Yeah.
So in Daniel 11, here we are, king of the north, king of the south. But in Daniel 8, it's what? East and
Yes.
south.
Yeah.
Okay? We have to combine this all together. We have to combine this all together. So, hold those thoughts. What are we dealing with here? The 25:20.
Yes.
And in 25:20, Isaiah 7, who is fighting against whom? They're coming against God's people. And who's coming against God's people?
Syria
It's
and
not Greece. Greece is not
Israel.
even on the scene.
Israel.
Syria and
It's
Israel.
right here on the board.
Syria.
Syria,
And Ephraim.
Ephraim,
Okay.
and Pekah. Okay?
Okay.
So that's that threefold union. That's where we started. The reason why we're looking at this is because we want to understand this. Okay? This is going to teach us something about this. That's why we're here. So you need to understand some concepts about this. So we're in Daniel 8, and we've understood the transition from Greece to pagan Rome involves the south and the east. We're okay with that. But the south and the east, according to Daniel 7, is the transition from Greece to pagan Rome. So you know the south and the east is Greece. Are we okay with that?
Yes.
But in Daniel 11, there's no east anywhere in Daniel 11. There's king of the north, king of the south.
Mm.
But it's talking about the same history.
Yeah.
The same events are going on. So you've got the king of the south, king of the north, and we have to tie that up with the south and the east here.
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing. The purpose is, how are we going to reconcile this symbology with this symbology? Okay, we have to reconcile those two. It's easy because the south and the south, so the south here and the south here, they line up. So let's come here. This person is called the south because if you take a map of this geography, and here is Israel, the pleasant land. If you go south, you're going to hit Egypt. So here's Egypt in the south. And if you go north, be careful how you answer this one. What are you going to hit when you go north? I could remember so carefully, not going to answer. Okay,
Greece.
but I did say to you, I did tell you ages and ages ago, you're going to meet, you won't meet, Greece is going to be over here.
Yeah, Syria.
Syria.
Syria, you're going to meet the nation of Syria.
Yeah.
So, let's think about this. You know, as well as I do, that when we talk about the north, we're talking about Babylon,
Yeah. And it's
the king of the north. And I said before, Babylon is in the east.
Yeah.
Remember I spoke about that?
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why Babylon is called the king of the north is because of geography. It's geography that's dictating that title. But remember, the title comes from prophecy. This is a prophetic title that you get because the king of the north is God.
Yeah.
And Satan wants to take that title, he wants to sit on the sides of the north, and so all his minions are going to take that title as his servant. So that's where that title comes, but it's controlled by geography. So the geography is this, that here's Israel, and all this area here is desert. and there's a beautiful river. If this is the coast that goes like this, there's a nice river that runs all the way through here, and this river is Euphrates. So here's the Euphrates, and if you want to make any kind of war with Egypt, it's always Egypt. The story is always between Babylon and Egypt, king of the north, king of the south, always having this warfare. If you want to make war with them, you have to go up the river and come down the coast to attack Egypt. You have to do that, because you can't get an army and supply it through a desert. You can today, but that's through airdrops. You can't do it then. Easily, anyway. So, when Babylon comes, he's going to come and attack always from the north. So that's why he gets this title to the king of the north. But geographically, it's Syria that's north of Israel. So we want to hold on to that thought. Now let's come back to this story here. The south and the east. So the south, this is Egypt. That's straightforward. But remember, it's Greece. Greece holds on to the territory of Egypt. Now, the reason why it says in the east, because if you read the verses that precede verse 9, what you're doing is looking at a compass. And if we were to have Italy here, and here's Rome, the geography looks something like this. This is the Mediterranean Sea, and then you go into the Black Sea. Here's Israel, and I've gone too far up, because Israel's going to come up like that, and the Black Sea is going to go somewhere here. And here you have Syria, and here you have Egypt. So when it says that this power, pagan Rome, in verse 9, chapter 8, is going to start manoeuvring and attacking, it's now directing it from Rome, and Rome is going to head in which direction if it wants to start dealing with this power? It's going to go east.
Yeah.
So if you go back into history, and we're in Daniel 8 verse 9, we've got the south, the east, and the pleasant land. That's how it's given in the verse for a reason. But we're going to flip this around and put it chronologically. Chronologically, it's east, pleasant land, and the south. Okay, this is 64 BC, this is 65 BC, and this is 31 BC. That's the dates that are being brought to view in Daniel 8 verse 9. And the person who's dealing with all of this mess is Pompey. I think it's EY or AY. You've heard of Mount Vesuvius, you've heard of the... so that island, that city, that place, was named after Pompey. He's a general. And he's not just any old general.
Yeah. EI.
Oh, EI?
No Y, just an I.
Okay, so this is Pompey.
Is that the dates 64, 65 would be after? Or before that?
65 and 64, is that the way around? And, sorry? And this is the Battle of Actium. Famous battle. So, if you go back into the history, what's being brought to view is, in 65 BC, there's problems in the Roman Empire. And the problem that's happening in the Roman Empire is that the nation that's living here in Syria are causing problems. I'm going to just shut these doors for a minute. While these are parking. So, there's problems in the Roman Empire, and the Syrians are causing trouble. So they're going to send General Pompey into Syria to subdue them. So this east here is Syria. So here's Syria. It's going to deal with Syria, and then it's going to deal with Israel in the same campaign. And then 30 years later, then they're going to deal with Egypt. And this story here is the story of Cleopatra, 31 BC. the story where Cleopatra is going to commit suicide because she loses the war. So we've got the dates, we've got the history. That's what's happening in Daniel 8 verse 9. And we've got Syria and Egypt. So you can see straight away that when we've got Syria here, we're connecting it to this story. I'm not saying Syria and here are the same thing, but I'm just making the connection between the two. Now let's deal with this issue here. So we've got the king of the north and the king of the south, and the reason they're given those titles is because Seleucus is going to take all of the territory that's north of Israel, and Ptolemy is going to take all the territory that's south of Israel. So if we've got Israel here, all this territory here is Seleucus, and all of this territory here is Ptolemy, and he's in the south and he's in the north. So that's where you get this title for the king of the north and king of the south. But
what happened to the other two? Because there were 4 generals.
they got killed
Okay.
with infighting, basically.
Okay.
Everybody wants to have a fight and become powerful, so they become enemies. They're not content with the territory that they own. So there's this essentially civil war where they eventually kill one another, and they end up taking this increasing amount of territory. So here's these two powers. As time goes on, the Ptolemies end up obviously having their capital in Egypt, and the Seleucid Empire, they end up having their capital not in Babylon, not in Greece, but in Syria. They end up having their capital in Syria. So that's going to be the power base where this family is going to reside, and this is the power base where this family is going to reside. And this person or the family owns all of this territory, which is identified as being north of Israel, and this is identified as being south of Israel. So here you have the title for the king of the north and the king of the south. But their central place, or the country in which they reside, is in Syria itself. Hence you get in Daniel 8 the story that it says in the east, because it's identifying, both are identifying Syria. It's east because Syria's east of Italy. Here you've got this map here, it's east. But this family owns all the territory that's north of Israel, but it resides, its capital is in Syria. So we're combining these two different images. We've got the king of the north, the Seleucid family, they're going to be living in Syria. And Daniel chapter 8 tells you that Syria is east of the city of Rome. So what we've done is we've gone through some history, gone through some prophecy, Daniel 7, 8, Daniel 11, and we've tied up the symbology together, and we've come to the conclusion that the king of the north can be identified as being Syria. Or I can rephrase that and say Syria becomes a symbol for the king of the north. But remember, the king of the north is in itself a symbol. The king of the north is a symbol of something else. This is not literal when we want to make an application. So Syria is a symbol of the king of the north. So what we want to do here, we're going to take this symbol, plug it into here, this story. So here we have Syria, and Syria is going to now represent what?
The church.
The king of the north. We'll stay with the king of the north at the moment. And Israel is symbolised by what? Israel is symbolised by?
King, which is
That king of the north.
Just here?
State.
Israel. Symbolised by?
Ephraim, the tribe of Ephraim.
10.
10.
Okay.
Because there's 10 of them. And what does 10 represent? So Israel represents something that's bad,
We know that.
but it's symbolised by 10. Okay? And the king of the north, or Syria, is a different symbol. We've got two different symbols, and we want to understand where those symbols are going to take us. So are we okay with that?
Yeah.
Right, let's come back into Daniel 11. Come back into Daniel 11, so we've made that connection. So in Daniel 11, we were in verses 5 and verses 6, and it mentions the king of the north. And who was that? Who was the king of the north in verses 5 and verses 6 that we said? Greece. Good, we've got that. So Greece. We're going to drop down, and we're not going to go through the verses, but after Greece comes what nation?
Right.
Pagan Rome. So you're going to drop down to the verses, and then you're going to have Rome, pagan, and what symbol is pagan Rome in Daniel 7? This beast, this iron beast in Daniel 7. Yeah? And if you go to Daniel chapter 8, it's this horn here. This horn is a symbol of pagan Rome. Are we okay with that? So pagan Rome's got different symbols.
Yes.
In Daniel 2, what's the symbol? Daniel 2, it's on the chart, Daniel 2. Legs of iron. Okay. So in Daniel 11, what's the symbol for pagan Rome? Don't look at the verses because you won't find it. Because it's not that straightforward. You just do it that way. Because it's complicated. So pagan Rome, the symbol of pagan Rome, as my sister said, is the king of the north. And that's why Daniel 11 is difficult. Because it's the same symbol for different empires. Because he wants to teach you something. Who's the original king of the north? Let's not go right back to the world, into heaven. We're in this story here. It tells you right here. He's got the crown, the king of the north, Babylon. So the king of the north was Babylon. But who comes after Babylon? Greece doesn't. Medo Persia. And who did Medo Persia take over? And when they went into Babylon and killed the king, what did they do with that crown? Put it on. So what title must they have?
King of the North.
King of the north. So hold that thought. Hold that thought. This is Babylon here. If you go all the way to the end of the world, and we look at this story here, Revelation 17, who is this woman?
Papacy.
Well, yeah, you get the point. But this is the papacy. And what does it say on her forehead? Mystery. Okay, but we can't do that because Babylon's up here and the woman's down here. So you're saying that she's Babylon down here and Babylon was up here. So if you're going to do that, what must Medo Persia be? Babylon. Okay, so you get the point. Babylon goes all the way through.
Yes, the crown just works its way down.
Yeah, because they've taken on the institution of Babylon.
Well, they've taken it over.
And my brother said it really nicely. Daniel chapter 3, the whole statue is,
Babylon.
but it's all gold.
Oh, yeah.
That's the point that he says, he's making a statement that at the end of the world, it's all Babylon.
Yeah.
Okay, it's all bad. So here we are. So you've got the point that it's king of the north, king of the north, king of the north, king of the north, and then you're going to come to the papacy. So this also must be the king of the north. Okay? Now, we're at the end of the world, and the papacy is a what? Church or state? Church. Okay, but we said Syria is the king of the north,
Yeah. And the church.
so it has to be a church. So we can see why Syria. So can we see how Syria now is the church? Because we thought it was the other way around, remember?
Right. Yeah.
So that's the state. Sorry, that's the church. We okay with that?
Because at the end of the world, the papacy, which is a church, is also the king of the north.
Excellent. And the king of the north is Syria, which in one chapter is the east, and in another chapter is the north. And we've explained how we can reconcile that difference. So we're in Revelation chapter 17. We're not going to go to the verses, but here we are in. We'll pick it up here. This is the easiest one. We're in Revelation 17. There's a beast that she's riding upon, and if you read the verses and pick up the symbology here, there are 10 horns on this beast. Okay, so I want to be careful now. We've got this. Let me call it an animal. I'll put beast in brackets. Okay, what is this animal or this beast in that symbology? Let's break this down. What have you got in that symbology? You've got a woman and a
Beast.
beast. We'll stop there. You already told me at the beginning that when you get two things coming together, what must they always be?
A mystery of iniquity.
Mystery of iniquity. Let's see what we've done here.
Oh. Combination of church and state, twofold union.
Church and state. So this must be dealing with a church and state.
Yeah.
When you've got a woman and a beast.
Yeah.
So who's the woman then?
Church.
And the beast is?
State.
State. Okay, but so here's our beast. We'll just give it one head at the moment for the sake of our discussion. It's got 7 heads. Where are the horns? Just look at the picture if you can see it. On the head. So here's the horns. So what is this beast? Church or state? Beast.
State, sorry.
State. If the beast is state and the horns are in its head, what must the horns be?
Kingdom. Yeah.
States. The whole beast is a state. It's got 7 heads. What must the 7 heads be?
State.
It's all state. Everything on that beast is all state. So once you see that, and how many horns are there? 10. This is bad.
Yeah.
So you've got this 10 is now,
Yeah.
we've got the bad, but it's now state.
Yeah.
So that's where we're getting this state from. If we went to the statue, which is, I think, a bit covered here, I don't know if you can see it here. Daniel 2, when they depict it and they have the toes, here are these toes that are being described. If you go through all of them, they're all states, they're all countries,
Yeah.
no churches there. So this is a standard understanding that these 10 is talking about states. Yeah? And these are 10 tribes. Yeah? 10 little kingdoms or empires or little countries, if you want to think about it that way. So it's all to do with state. There's a church and state relationship, and we've defined who is who. That Syria is a church and Israel is the state.
Yeah.
Are we okay with that?
It's the king of the north.
Because it's the king of the north. So the king of the north, as you run through, is Babylon all the way through. It's the same title, or it goes from Babylon, Media, Persia, Greece, Papal Rome to Papal Rome. Papal Rome at the end of the world is this church that we will understand. So let's rub all of the stuff out that we've just put on. And we're back where we were in Isaiah 7. And what we've just done is, it took us a bit of time, but we hopefully enjoyed ourselves on the journey. What we've done is we've defined what this symbology is. Okay? So we've done 90% of the work that we need to do. So you've got a threefold union, and the threefold union is a combination of church and state. But what we've done is we've gone, well, why was it Syria? Why was it not another country? Why is all of this happening this way? And so now we're going into prophecy, and we're saying that this is a story about...
Wasn't Syria attacking Ephraim?
No, it says they're confederate.
Yeah, but before that.
That's the Assyrians. But yeah, there's been war between all the nations. We're just taking a snapshot at that story, because that little snapshot is going to give us this huge story, and it's only happening in 4 or 5 verses. So here's Syria, and I'm going to say this. Here's 1, 2, 3. So let's see what this applies. What was number 1?
Church.
King of the North, which is a church. And what church is there?
Babylon.
What church is there?
Assyria.
Papal Rome. Papacy.
Papacy, Papal Rome.
Okay.
Okay? And number 2 was Ephraim. We're at Ephraim now. And this is the 10. And what is this?
Kingdoms. Side.
Bad states.
Yeah.
And what does this represent?
Countries.
Israel.
Countries
State.
at the end of the world. Papal Rome. These are the 10 horns. Okay, so this is the United Nations at the end of the world.
Right.
And then we've got number 3, which is one person, Pekah. And Pekah is church or state?
State.
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 USA.
So president.
So he must be a president, and he's got his own country, but that country is part of all of this.
All the other countries.
So
Wow.
whoever he is,
USA president.
he must be the part of the UN.
Yeah.
And which part is he, the head or the tail?
It'd be more
He's
like-
the king. No, he's the king, remember? So he's not a tail. He's the leading figure of his own tribe, and he's the leading figure of all of them.
Oh,
So he's part of the UN, and he must be the king of the UN. So all you need to do is
What's his name?
go anywhere
Donald Trump.
on the internet,
Obama.
and you know that the leading nation is the United States, because the United States is part of the UN. But what part are they? The head or the tail? They run the UN.
Yeah,
They finance it, and whatever they do, everybody just ends up agreeing. It's what's it called, the coalition of the willing.
It's true, but doesn't the Pope doesn't he have quite a lot to say about that too?
Who's that?
The Pope.
But the Pope is,
The chair.
yeah, the Pope isn't part of the system. He's going to. There's going to be a church-state relationship, which has already begun,
Yeah.
but the church, papacy, is not state.
No, but he already has a lot to say.
Without Syria, could Ephraim have done anything?
No.
Syria has to get involved. Do you not think Pekah and Reason were consulting together? Do you think Pekah's some big shot? Not really. Do you think Reason is? He certainly is. He's a force to contend with. So in this relationship, who do you think is doing all the strategy on how to come and defeat Ahaz? It's Reason.
Yeah.
Reason saying, I'll tell you what to do. I've got more soldiers, better equipped. We're the ones who are competent, and we're just helping you out, or they're self-serving, obviously. So we know that the papacy is the more is behind it, or pulling all the strings, or doing everything. And this isn't mitigating any of that. You can everything you understand about the Roman papacy is all built into this story. But we're just taking it on a simplistic level. So this is Pekah is talking about that we can put the president. But my point is not so much to deal with the president, it's to show you that there's a threefold union between the United States, the United Nations, and the papacy. That's what we want to pick up. This is the United States.
When you want to control the world, you just control the nation that controls the world.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what the papacy is.
And it only takes one man to do it. Or one woman. Depending on what you want to think. But one leader is going to do it, he's going to do that. So this story here, we're in 742. What is this a story about? It's about a threefold union that's going to do what? That wants to come and destroy God's people. And they're coming down to make that destruction. So, if I said all of this is to do with the 2520, would that be something that's relevant to us at the end of the world for God's people? It would be. It has to be. So when you get people who say, well, prove the numbers, the 2520 is error, it's not the longest time prophecy, otherwise it doesn't talk about it, and it's a meaningless thing, and if you carry on pushing the agenda, we're going to disfellowship you. I mean, all that's good and well, but when they say it has no relevancy to us, that's when we become offended. That's when we get upset when people say it doesn't mean anything.
How can it not mean anything if it's in Scripture?
Of course.
Because they say
I mean, that's the default position, but they'll say, well, what does it mean? And I'm saying it's not just some kind of numbers that you can generate with some nice patterns, but it's hard, factual information that the story that leads up to this thing is the story at the end of the world. You can see it here, you can see these threefold units, clear to see. So if we go to Revelation chapter 16,
Don't a lot of people say that the 2520 doesn't even appear in the Bible because it doesn't mention 2520 as such, it just talks
oh yes,
Yeah, so a lot of people say that.
Revelation 16, verse 13. And I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, and out of the mouth of the beast, and out of the mouth of the false prophet. So here you have a threefold union at the end of the world. The dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And we can go into Spirit Prophecy quotes and into other Bible verses to back and defend this up. But so let me rub all of this out. Oh, I'm sorry, was it too late? Was it too soon? Sorry. Here's the US. This here is the dragon. And this is the beast.
And this is the prophet.
And this is the false prophet. We shouldn't wear logos. Coming on to dress before.
Shouldn't wear those.
We shouldn't wear logos on our clothes. Because when you wear a logo on your clothing, what are you doing? You're a walking billboard for a company that you know nothing about. And you're making a statement that you endorse the belief system of this company or organisation. And in the corporate world, they call it branding. You need to have a good brand. When Ellen White talks about Greece, let me not put it there, let me put it here. The reason why I say Greece, because this is Daniel chapter 2, I think verse 39. Let me check that. Daniel 2 verse 39, it says, "And after thee shall arise another kingdom, inferior to thee, Medo Persia, and a third kingdom." Who's the third kingdom? Greece. Greece. So we're dealing with Greece, verse 39, "which shall bear rule over all the earth." So it's telling you that Greece does what? What's the definition of Greece, according to Daniel 2? Rules
All, which is all the present earth at that time, which was the
all the earth.
which is the south.
Now, if you were to go and check all the kingdoms, who's the most powerful kingdom out of all the 4 kingdoms?
Babylon.
Greece.
Rome. If you go to Daniel 7, it says that those iron teeth crunch everything up. So iron's stronger than gold. If you go down, this is gold, and what's this one?
Silver.
It gets harder and harder and harder. This is the most powerful nation that's ever existed, Rome, coming right down to the end of the world. So here, the most powerful nation is the 4th empire, Rome.
Yeah.
But it doesn't say that Rome rules the earth. It says Greece rules the earth. What is the definition of a ruler? It's a king. So you have a king who rules the earth. And at the end of the world, what would we define that as? Who rules the whole world? Don't say the papacy.
The one who makes us stink.
Sorry?
The one who makes us stink.
The one who makes us stink?
United Nations.
This is the United States
Yeah.
is only a portion. It's the United Nations that runs everything.
Technically.
Because it's a one world government. We're already at the one world government. We've been here for decades and decades, and we're still waiting for it to happen. Adventists are so far behind time, it's unbelievable. So, all of this is being defined as the UN. So, who does Greece represent then? It's the UN. Okay. So, Ellen White says the following. Oh, I've lost you.
Yeah.
Have I lost you? Because Greece rules all the earth, and the United Nations, by definition, rules all the earth. Ellen White says the following: kings, rulers, governors. Represent the dragon. She's got all of these. She gets kings, rulers, and governors represent the dragon power. And I'm saying the dragon power is the United Nations, this threefold union. So, and it's symbolised by kings, rulers, and governors. The United Nations, by definition, is a combination of many kings or many rulers, many governors. it's not the United States, because the United States is only run by one man. So it has to be this pluralism. But it says something else. It says not only the dragon power, but they've taken upon themselves the brand. And you know what the brand is? It's Antichrist. We could do that. So the dragon power has taken upon itself the branding of the Antichrist. So they're all wearing t-shirts saying, we support the Antichrist. So, you know, even dress reform's tucked into these thoughts and concepts. We should be careful about what kind of logos you want to attach to our bodies, because you make a statement. So even though you go in the world and people say, we don't see any of that, Adventists see that this one world government are all wearing t-shirts that all say, we support the Antichrist. So that's the dragon power. It's the United Nations that are supporting the papacy. And then you've got the United States, the false prophet. We could go into much of this history, much of this discussion, but we're not. But the purpose that I want us to see is that there's this threefold union that's going to come and destroy God's people, and they represent the papacy, the United Nations, and the United States, or the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet. And have they done anything yet in the story? No. But they're already formed, they're already there, and the warning is
They have a purpose.
they have a purpose and they're going to come and get you.
When the time's right.
So what we want to see first of all, which is really in opposition to Adventism, is one of the most important things that this teaches you is the following. The threefold union, the dragon, the beast, and the false prophet, do not come on the scene at the Sunday law. The Sunday law is the end. They're already here, and they haven't even started doing anything yet. They're not even touching God's people yet. They're just threatening. So you want to see from this story, the most important thing is that the threefold union is fully formed before probation closes. And you can see that. You know the United Nations is around. You know the papacy is doing its thing. And you know the United States has already capitulated a long time ago and doing all very, very strange things. But we're not putting the dots together and understanding really clearly, with a clear message to give to God's people, that the threefold union isn't partially formed or about to be formed or getting ready for something. They're already there. So that's the most important thing I want us to learn from this story.
I think 1989 proves that.
Yes, the point is there's many ways of approaching this, and you can prove it, but people still resist.
Yeah.
But we're tackling this whole story from the 2520. So the 2520 is teaching you all the things that you're learning from Daniel 11, verse 3 to 45. All the things that we understood from a different perspective. You can get all of that truth from the 2520, all on its own, just by putting pieces of the jigsaw puzzle together. And that's why this is such a powerful prophecy. Unbeknown to many of God's leaders, this is why this message cannot go to God's people. They cannot have this because this message warns you that destruction is about to happen when you understand it correctly. Now, I'm not saying your leaders, my leaders, our leaders, have got some secret agenda. I'm not talking about conspiracies. I'm not talking about Jesuits in the church. We don't need Jesuits in the church. I'm not even sure that we've got Jesuits in the church. We never teach that we have people on this message, because you don't need Jesuits. Because I tell you something, in this history, go check, there weren't any Jesuits there. There were no Jesuits in that history. The only people that are ruling in Jerusalem are pure Jews. They've got family trees that run back that would shock us.
And they messed it up for themselves.
And they do it all by themselves. We do not need Jesuits in our church. And when you start listening to people who blame everything on the Jesuits, you should run away from those people who are teaching such foolishness. Because that is not end-time prophecy. End-time prophecy is going back into ancient Israel and understanding what went on there. Because if you want to look in the future, where you're supposed to look, you spend all your time in the past, because that's the definition of prophecy, and not going onto websites or attaching yourselves to ministries who are talking about conspiracy theories, because they're just not fit for purpose. You don't not only need to do that, but it will send you in the wrong direction. Because you then begin to think, we've got these evil, wicked, underhanded men, and it breeds mistrust. And that's what Satan wants. He wants us to mistrust our friends, the strangers that we have, our brothers and sisters, and our leaders. And we don't teach that. I'm not telling you to mistrust our leaders. We should uphold them in prayer. They're decent, honest, genuine men who run our church. But they've got a wrong view of prophecy because they've had a wrong training. And we really need to shift the way we conceptualize the problems in the church and how we treat people. Conspiracy theories make you hate people, make you distrust them. And we shouldn't be entering into that ground. That's Satan's enchanted ground, I think. This message stands on its own 2 feet. If you want to attack anybody, attack Ahaz. Attack these men. These are the ones that are causing the problems for us at the end of the world. But our problem isn't that we've got bad leaders. They've just got wrong ideas. So don't get bogged down into conspiracy theories and Jesuits and all that. You don't need any of that. None of this is brought to view in any of this story. But we've got a threefold union that's fully formed. And we're in Isaiah 7. So, we're in Isaiah 7, and we read a number of the verses. In fact, we read right down to verse 8. But I just want to refresh our minds quickly. Verse 1, And it came to pass in the days of Ahaz, the son of Jotham, the son of Uzziah, king of Judah, that Rezin, the king of Syria, and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, king of Israel, went up toward Jerusalem to war against it, but could not prevail. We should just stop there in verse 1. It cannot prevail. Now, is that a good message?
Yeah.
Now, the problem is, if you start skipping over a few chapters, well, not in this book, but I think you have to go to 2 Chronicles to do this, you're going to find that they're going to destroy and decimate Jerusalem and Judah. They're going to come in a little time afterwards, and they're going to kill, I think, 120,000 men. They're going to get wiped out in a battle. They take hundreds of thousands of men captive. So even it says that they did not prevail, don't be confused that everything's going to be okay. And the reason they're not going to be okay is because Ahaz decides not to obey God and listen. He's not going to accept what God is teaching. He doesn't want to do it God's way. He's going to reject. But even though he does, the Lord is still going to save a remnant. But there's decimation after this verse. But we should hold on to this promise that it says it could not prevail. The whole of Jerusalem is not going to be destroyed. Verse 2, And it was told the house of David, saying, Syria is confederate with Ephraim, and his heart was moved, and the heart of his people, as the trees of the wood, are moved with the wind. So remember we mentioned this word confederate. So let's get rid of that, and we're confederate. Verse 3, Then said the Lord unto Isaiah, Go forth now to meet Ahaz, and take your son with you, and we're going to meet in a certain place. Verse 4, And say unto him, Take heed and be quiet, fear not, neither be faint-hearted, for the 2 tails of these smoking firebrands, for the fierce anger of Rezin with Syria and the son of Remaliah. Verse 5, Because Syria, 1, Ephraim, 2, the son of Remaliah, 3, have taken evil counsel against thee. So there's the threefold union. Let us go up against Judah and vex it, and let us make a breach therein for us, and set a king in the midst of it, even the son of Tabeel. Just to make this point, when it says a breach, when you talk about breaches in a fortified city, so here's our fortified city, it's got a wall around it. If you make a breach, what are you doing?
Making a hole in the wall.
You're making a hole in the wall. So there's a hole in the wall, or the wall's getting broken. So this breach, what are we meant to be? According to Isaiah, we're meant to be the repairers of the breach. Because what is the breach when we have this story about the repair of the breach? What do we normally understand this to be?
Fixing the problem, yeah.
What is the problem? There's a breach in what? In the wall.
What is it? The word of God? Or?
This is the Sabbath.
Sabbath.
because the Sabbath was the wall of protection for God's people. It was the Sabbath that separates us from the world. You know, Christ came to do what? He came to break down this wall of partition between the Jews and the Gentiles. And then not long afterwards, you know what he does? He builds up the wall of partition again. And the wall of partition between us and the world is the Sabbath. So here's this Sabbath. And what do they want to do in this story? It says, let us go up against Judah and vex it, and let us make a breach. They want to punch a hole in the wall. This is an indication or the symbology that they want to destroy the Sabbath. This is the Sabbath issue that's being brought to view in this story, symbolically, because they want to make a breach. You make a breach in the wall. Look at verse 6. Let us make a breach. This breach, it has different meanings as well, but this is this breach in the wall that we talk about when we see the repairers of the breach. Because the wall, or the hedge, Ellen White's clear on it in the symbology, because you have a vineyard in here with a tower, and there's a wall around it, and the wall is the commandments of God, and it's the fourth commandment that's really being dealt with here, the hedge or the wall. Verse 7, thus saith the Lord God, it shall not stand. Their confederate plan is not going to stand, it's not going to come to effect. For the head of Syria is Damascus, and the head of Damascus is reasoning, within 65 years shall Ephraim be broken, and it be not a people. So there we've got this time prophecy of 65 years. So we have a 65-year time prophecy, which is going to take us, well, I'll put it here. I'm just going to zoom this out. Before we start tackling this, I just want to run through this history here. We're in Zedekiah. What happens to Israel when Zedekiah is taken down? They get taken into, and where is that captivity? Babylon. They go to Babylon. And remember, in 596, Assyria and Babylon are the same thing. You can show that. I don't say that in a kind of light-hearted way. So when Hoshea gets taken down, where do they go? They go to Assyria, which is basically Babylon. So you know that these are closed probations being dealt with here. Then they go into captivity. You've got 70-year captivity, and then they're going to come out. And when they come out, that's the subject of the Persian kings, who are Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes. The first, the fourth, and the seventh king. And there's two more in between them. And then Artaxerxes takes you to all the way down 490 years later to the story of Christ. 34:27. We're all familiar with that? Mm-hmm. This is the 2300-day prophecy. It's going to take us to when? 1844. And you've got 1798. Okay, what happens in AD 34? Because if this is 2300 days and that's 490, this is 1810.
It's not the crucifixion.
The crucifixion is here in the midst of the week. This is the stoning of Stephen.
Stoning of Stephen, yes.
This is the story for the Jews. And this is the story for the Gentiles. This is one story about God's people as you go all the way through. Literal Jews all the way along here until you get to this point here. So you've got to here, and you're going to switch from literal Jews to what kind of? To spiritual. So now we go from ancient Israel to the New Testament church in AD 34. So all the story that runs from AD 34, that runs all the way through to 1844, we're still dealing with Judah all the way through. It's one continuous theme all the way through here. Starts literal, then goes symbolic. So I want us to see that this story runs all the way through here. 1844, you now come into Adventism, Seventh Church, Laodicea, and here we are running through history, and we're now coming to 1989, and then we're coming to the Sunday law. This is the US Sunday law when we talk about that history. Remember, if this was the birth of, let me take this 27, I'll leave 27 here because you probably put it in your note. I'm going to put here the birth. This is the birth of John the Baptist, birth of Christ. When you take that, you've got the birth to Stoney and Stephen, you've got 1798 to 1844, 98 to Sunday law. They're all repeating themes. Cyrus to Artaxerxes. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 histories, all repeating histories. This story is the story of what? God's people that runs all the way through. What did God start off with? What did he want to do? He wanted to have how many people? We'll begin it here. 12 tribes. Here's our 12 tribes. That's his will. The 12 tribes. It comes from Jacob. Jacob overcomes God. He gets his name changed to Israel. He has 12 sons. And they're the ones that are going to give the gospel message to all the world. This is God's will. And God's will is being performed all the way through here. But they're going up and down. It gets really bad. And he says, I'm going to break this family tie up. Just as he did at the Tower of Babel. He fragmented them because they were going nowhere. So you've got this separation, and now God's will for his people has been scuttled. It's not going to happen because you've lost 10/12 of all of your people. So here you go with 2 all the way through. Now can God's ultimate will be fulfilled with these 2 going all the way through? Can it be fulfilled if you've only got the 2 tribes? We should know the answer because we want to all be part of the what?
The remnant.
144,000. And what's that composed of? 12 tribes. So what you know what God's will is. This cannot be his will that it's going to all finish here. So what must his will be? To get those 10 tribes and do what with them?
Bring them back together.
They have to be brought back together. So you're going to get these 10 that are going to come all the way through. And they're going to come and join, and so you're going to get these 12.
Okay.
So that's God's will.
Edom, Moab,
That's to
and
come out
sons
of the
of
Moab
Ammon.
people.
Ammon.
Where have they been?
And they've been in
Babylon.
Babylon.
They've been in Babylon all this time,
Edom, Moab, and
for
Ammon.
thousands and thousands of years, and now you're going to draw them back in. That's our role. Our role here at the end of the world was to fix the mess that Solomon had, Rehoboam had, Ahaz had, and as you go all the way through, every single one's just doing this bad job. They're not doing God's will. So right at the end, when you get to all of this history, everybody's messing up, and he's waiting for a group of people like you and me to get our brothers and sisters back in the church. That's what he wants. That's the gospel message, to bring them all back. But first we have to get ourselves in order. You have to get yourselves in order before you could call them in. 1810. Where's 1810?
Under Gentiles.
Under Gentiles.
Oh, Ellen White actually quotes it, great controversy. It's 2,300 days minus 490. And she says, once the 70 weeks was completed in AD 34, she says there remained 1,810 years, which was when the message went especially to the Gentiles. So it's a number that she does. It's not a prophetic number, it's not a prophecy.
It just fills in
It's
the
just,
gap.
yeah, but she quotes that number. So this is the purpose or the story at your first approach of the 2520. The 2520 is dealing with, conceptually, what happened to these people? They went into Babylon, they were scattered. So it's talking about the scattering of a people, and what's our job function? To bring them all back together.
Gathering.
Okay, so this is the scattering and the gathering. This is what the 2520 is about. That's the point of it. That God has scattered his people because of their sins. And now he wants to gather them all back together again. So, as we think about this, we want to understand a bit more about the intricacies and the numbers and understand how we're going to connect some more dots together. But conceptually, this is what the issue is. His purpose was to have 12, and he wants 12 at the end. I do not want to leave you with the wrong impression. This 12 is not 144,000. Because don't be misled to think that these are the people that it says, 18 verse 4, Revelation, come out of her, my people. And when that 10 and the 2 join together, that's not part of the 144. The 144,000 is a different story, a different theme. But tucked into all of that symbology is the fact that this 144,000 becomes the catalyst for joining the 2 tribes together.
So that is the Edom, Moab, and Ammon, yeah.
So this is Daniel 11 verse 41. Edom, Moab,
And the son of Ammon or whatever it
and the chief of the children of Ammon.
Chief,
First fruit.
Yeah.
Because he's dealing with the beginning.
Yeah.
Any questions of what we've covered?
No.
So, even though you've given us dates in that, so 25-20
I've only
is
given you-
basically the threefold union.
I've only given you one day.
No.
And what I want is, all I've given you is 742. I've got to give you a lot more than that. All I've done so far is about 1/10 of a 25-20 study. But it's the important part to understand what it's about. So the important part to understand what it's about is to know that the beginning of this story is teaching you about the end. This was the Alpha and the Omega. So the 25-20 is talking about the scattering of God's people and then the gathering of God's people. That's one thing. It's this splitting of the 12 tribes into 10 and 2, and then they're going to be rejoined together. That's what we want to get from 25-20. And another thing that we're getting from 25-20 is the way it all starts is the way it's going to end. And when God said to Ahaz, if you believe, what's going to happen to you? Let me read it so we may have forgotten.
Nothing will happen to you. He'll be protected.
He'll be protected. I'm just going to pick up the words. It says, verse 9, and the head of Ephraim is Samaria, and the head of Samaria is Remaliah's son. If ye will not believe, surely ye shall not be established. So if you believe,
Then you're
you're established. Who is Ahaz? Ahaz is the ruler of God's people.
Yeah, Judah.
And did he believe? He didn't.
No.
We could go into the verses that show you that. If he does that, what does that mean? That his children and his grandchildren, all the kings that are going to come after him, that come out of his loins, are they going to be established or not? They're not going to be established. So that is teaching you, if you take the truth of 25-20, he rejects, the leader of the church rejects this promise, and I'm going to call the promise, in the context of what we're discussing, the 25-20, he's rejecting this message, and when the leader rejects the message, you're not going to be established. That's the beginning of this story. What's it going to teach you about the end? People ask, why does the church reject the 25-20? They reject the 25-20 because they believe prophecy. We rejected it at the beginning, and we're going to reject it at the end. And what was the message? The message is this. There's a threefold union that's going to come and destroy you. You need to believe me that I can handle this and sort it out for you. And the church leadership say, no, we don't trust you. It's not true. Nothing's going to happen. It's all going to be okay. And they're going to go to other places to find support and help.
So what we're seeing is, spiritual reformation. It's aligning themselves with papal Rome, because we know where that comes from, and it's come out of Rome itself.
The type of reformation you mean?
So
Yeah, spiritual
in other
formation.
words, spiritual formation.
Spiritual formation, yeah.
Yeah. So what did I not say? Spiritual formation.
You said reformation.
Oh,
They think it's a reformation.
Yeah,
That's
no,
why you said.
spiritual formation. Because, the big call is revival and reformation in our church.
Yeah.
And yet they're introducing spiritualism
Yeah.
into our church. So in fact, that's a rejection like Ahaz. That, God will take care of us, let's stay pure to to, you know, to the truth of God's word and the spirit of prophecy. So,
Where did we get spiritual formation from?
From
Catholics.
From the Catholics.
Lloyd, what's his name?
That's fine, but
Ignatius Lloyd.
I just want to get the Catholics. And the Catholics symbolically are who?
Papacy.
Syria.
Babylon.
King of the North.
King of the North.
They're
Yeah.
the King of the North. If you go back into this history, God says to Ahaz, trust me and I'll deal with your enemy. Do you know who Ahaz goes to instead of trusting God?
Oh,
He goes to his best friend,
which?
I think it's
Medium.
Tiglath-Pileser, his name is. It may not be.
I was going to ask you about that.
He's the king of Syria.
Not Syria.
Syria.
He goes to the king of Assyria. And the king of Assyria, different line of thought, but same prophecy, is the king of the north. So it's exactly the same thing. God says, I'll sort your problem out when you see the threefold union coming. And instead of going to God for support, he says, I'd rather go into spiritual formation and get support and help from the king of the north, from the papacy.
Yeah.
So even that, even the subject of spiritual formation, you get all tucked into the story of the 2520. There's so much in this story.
So today's Seventh-day Adventist Church is really going to the papacy for assistance.
Yeah, past tense.
But it
Absolutely.
did with its
Past tense.
implications.
Yeah, well that too, but yeah, thoroughly.
Yeah, but it directly.
And it supports that. I mean, they even go along to you know, pay homage to the Pope when he turns up.
Ecumenical stuff, yeah.
And all the ecumenical business.
And Ahaz bows down to this king
Yes, yeah, and he did. They did.
and offers him a gold medal.
Yeah,
Offers him a lot of gold.
yeah.
So that's real.
That's terrible.
Gold medal. That's
And then
real.
when he went to visit him,
Oh, so
he said, I like the look of that idol in your temple. And he gets the priest to make a sketch of it, and they go and produce their own one and put it in the sanctuary. And what did he say idols are?
Logo.
no.
Logos? Idols are
Oh,
false
doctrine.
doctrine.
Yeah.
It's not the car that you idolise,
No, it's
or your
false
house, or
doctrine.
your
That's
looks.
right.
It's false doctrine.
Yeah.
So we're going to the papacy
Yeah.
to pick up false doctrine
Mm.
because they look really nice, look much better than our doctrine.
Yeah, and it works apparently because you get lots of young people in the church and you get lots of numbers. Well, they will do. That's their plan.
Excellent.
As long as there's lots of, you know, lots of music, everything
Yeah.
else.
So
and
just
Entertainment.
watered
To
down,
bring them in and
yeah.
contain them.
Watered down
So yeah,
sermons.
so everything that you're saying is what you see,
Yeah.
and I'm saying that you can all see it in the
In that
scriptures.
story.
You can.
When you do a study
Yeah.
on the 2520. 2520 is a good study.
That's
Open up a
Which
lot
is
of
a good
truth.
reason for them to hate it, I guess, when you think about it. But they don't know why they hate
Yeah.
it. But that is
Exactly.
why they hate it.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
saying.
So we need to go and study that story. Okay?
Yes.
In
The
more
20
detail now.
Kings, Chronicles, and Isaiah, and you'll get the background of this story. We don't have time to go through all it because I want to go somewhere else. But if you go and check that story, you'll see all of that in here.
The 25. Oh, sorry. Beg your pardon. I just wanted to say it
Yeah.
shines a light on the whole thing. The 2520 is like a light that shines everything. That's all.
Yes, the 2520
You seen the light?
has integrity. Has integrity to it. It takes you from the beginning of this history, it's going to take you all the way to the end of the world, and it's going to draw in many, many truths.
And,
Many,
and
many
it's like you're saying, it shows us history that repeats itself.
Yeah. I have confidence in this, but I'm just curious to know what you say, because I've not heard an answer to this, about Mrs. White's statement that the 2,300 day prophecy is the longest time prophecy.
What we'll do is, once we've done this study, we'll go and read the statement, and I'll tell you my understanding of how to read that.
Right.
What we have to remember is, you have to be good at grammar.
Yes.
Now, most of us are not good at grammar.
And her style of grammar and her day, things have changed. I believe Satan changes our language rapidly, especially with these devices, shortening everything and change, in order so that we don't understand
Putting a
scriptures
comma
with
here and a
prophecy.
comma there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some of Ellen White's passages are not that easy to grapple
It's
with.
the same as I tell you, this day you will be with me in heaven. Isn't it?
Is it grammar or is it language that we're
Language
talking about as
changes.
well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Grammar.
Yeah. Because
But I think in that particular one, it's a lot to do with the grammar. So just in summary, so we know where we've got to. This story of the 2520 is a threefold union. It's a church and state relationship This is the church, Syrian. Israel is symbolised by the 10, which is a state, which is something that's bad. We got all of that from Daniel chapter 8, Daniel chapter 7, and Daniel chapter 11. So you need to be able to understand the sequence and how to put that logic together. And then we're saying this is the church state and a singular king, King of the North 10, one person. It's Papal Rome, the United Nations, and the USA. The United Nations have got a branding on them that they support the papacy. So there you see this relationship tucked in here. The United States is the false prophet. We didn't go into all the intricacies of all of that. And then the whole theme of the 2520, these are going to get taken to Babylon, and they're going to remain scattered all the way through until they come to the end, and it's God's will that they're going to come back together. Do we know that this was the subject of Habakkuk chapter 2, this chart? We've discussed this, yeah? And so was this one. If you go into the book of Habakkuk, it talks about the prophecy in the book of Habakkuk of this. This prophecy is actually contained in the book of Habakkuk, the prophecy of this scattering and then coming back and joining together again.
Wow.
And so this scattering here and this gathering is God's will. And I've done a line here that takes you all the way from literal Jews to the New Testament church and becomes spiritual Jews until you come to our day and age from 1844, and we're now modern Israel. Ellen White uses the term that we're modern Israel.
Are you going to cover the two 2520s and the 1260s?
Yep, I'll cover all of that.
When will that
Where?
happen? When will that happen?
Tomorrow I'll do it.
She's getting anxious.
We have the
Yeah,
afternoon
I
also.
don't want
Oh, this afternoon, no, this
Oh,
afternoon.
yeah, because you're waiting, aren't
So
you?
that will be the full 10?
Wednesday morning. Yeah.
The what, sorry?
You said there's only one tent, and so the rest of
Oh.
Monday, yeah.
I doubt we can do
Yes, it is.
last time I did the 2520, it took me a long time.
Only.
And I didn't know half the things I know then.
Yeah.
To do it thoroughly, slowly, properly, it's about 40 hours of work. So we couldn't cover everything here.
40 hours.
It depends who does it.
It's probably
Depends who
easy.
does it.
We'll give you the link.
Yes.
Go watch that.
Yeah, that's right. Midnight Pride.
Yeah, I'll give you. I'll put the websites on the board. Let's close it.
Yeah.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for your goodness and your watch care over your people. We ask and pray, Lord, that we might become excited about studying your word, that we might become motivated to read those Old Testament stories with new eyesight, new glasses, in a way that we've never looked at and read them before, so that they may begin to make sense to us. Father, as we consider the story of Cleopatra, the story of Pompeii, help us to see these things in the way that you always wanted them to be understood. Now you've given us this eyesight, Lord, may we use it to correctly divide the word of God. As we think about the 2520, we think about this threefold union and all the thoughts that this story teaches us. Father, we stand trembling because our leaders have already rejected, and you've already told us that we are not going to be an established people. Father, all we can do is individually and in small groups band together and pray and hope that we might be saved from the desolation that's about to hit this church. Be with us and bless us, we ask and pray in Jesus' name.
Amen.
Amen.